Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Denis. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis.
Hey, welcome to the show, Leadership is Changing. What we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Leaders everywhere confront similar obstacles because people are people, but everywhere you go, leaders are overwhelmed, disrupted, and under pressure. They run from email to email, meeting to meeting. Many leaders are not changing quick enough, which means they run the risk of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. The purpose of the show is taking our listeners' leadership to another level by finding their balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. I believe we don't have enough effective leaders in the world today, and if we can get the leaders to step up and lead change, then they can inspire real change. Hey listeners, it's now time to adapt in our fast-moving world. Welcome to the Ask Denis freestyle episode that is with you this week, and this is where I'm asked a question by our listeners, and I share my thoughts and insights and experiences from working with many leaders around the globe. And I want to welcome you to today's session. It's great to have you here. Hey, if you're already loving these episodes or these podcasts, we would love you to go and put a rating and a review. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcast, you can put a rating, which will be out of 5 stars, and then also you can put a written review. If you're on Spotify recently have just announced that the fact that you can now put a rating for these podcasts. And so if you're on those 2 different platforms, we would love to get you to put a rating and a review, which will really help the impact, the visibility, and the value of the podcast. You see, because what happens here is it helps in the rankings, and a lot of people get to see this actual podcast, and then they'll actually listen to it, and that's when we can grow people and have their voices heard as a leader. All right, let's get into today's episode of the Ask Denis freestyle episode, and it's about being a relevant leader. Went to the dictionary or went to find out a little bit about what does it mean to be relevant, and it's the ability to adapt and evolve. Now, with COVID and the pandemic happening, of course, we've seen leaders who are having to adapt and evolve. In fact, we've seen their businesses really having to evolve and adapt. Somebody I interviewed recently on one of the podcasts, one of my interview guests, we talked about reinventing yourself as a leader, as a business, and quite a lot of businesses have actually had to do this. Their businesses were needing to stay relevant. In fact, they were asking these various questions, whether it came from the board of directors or whether it came from the CEO. Are we in the right business today? Is it relevant? Do we have the right organizational structure to actually support that business that we're in? And then do we actually have the right leadership in place to actually execute, make this happen, and bring it to life? You see, personal leaders needed to do the same thing. They needed to stay relevant, adapt, and evolve, especially with the pandemic. A lot of their roles had been disappeared. For some of them, the businesses they were working for closed down. And so they actually had to take some time out to actually reskill themselves, grow their capabilities in different areas, and maybe go off and adapt and evolve. In other words, reinvent themselves. So in my intro, we talk about how businesses or leaders aren't changing quick enough, and then they run the risk of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. For a lot of leaders, they don't like that. They don't want to be left behind. They want to stay relevant. They want to know that they can be actually able to contribute to the business and to their teams, but they also know the fact that if they don't stay relevant, then they may not be wanted going forward. And so the thing here for you is, how do you stay relevant? How do you evolve? How do you adapt as a leader to be a relevant leader going forward? And so I've got some different key areas that I want to focus here with you today in talking about that. Firstly, I think it's about your purpose, your why. Are you clear on what your purpose is in life and in business? Because you see, when things get a little bit difficult, if we don't have a very strong why, purpose behind us, then we can easily give up. Now, you'll find that also that across different generations, and in particular, if we think of millennial and so forth, they are looking for strong purposes. They are looking for a leader with a purpose. And if the leader doesn't have the purpose, or the organization they work with, if it's not relevant for them, then they'll tend to adapt and evolve and go and find a business that does have a strong purpose. So be very clear on what your purpose is and understand that. And if you need some work on that, then work on it. Start to think about it. Brainstorm. Be curious. Go out and work on that different area. Number 2 is your values. What are your values as a leader? These are really your foundations, your pillars that are going to help you stay strong as a leader and understand where you're going. So what are your values today? Do you have clarity around the values, or is there some work that you might need to do to either understand what your values are or to polish them up, to strengthen them, to help you understand a little bit stronger in what they mean? In other words, give them a little bit more substance rather than just a bunch of words. You might want to think about 5 key values for you. Get clear on them, think about them, be curious, learn about them, understand them more, so then you know whether they're the right things for you, and is that how you live your life and you lead as a leader today. The third one is around how you show up as a leader. Because you see, how you show up as a leader really matters, and it really does. It's important to see how we show up. And if you haven't actually reviewed this with yourself of late, got feedback from others, then I think you might want to check in with yourself and check in the mirror and just see what's going on for you. What is your leadership presence like? In fact, what is your energy like? What is it like to be around you? Are you full of energy, got a lot of energy? Or are you somebody what I call a knuckle dragger, somebody who's down in the dumps and their shoulders are quite crunched, sort of hunched, if I can put it that way, and just not showing energy and not having a lot of energy? Passion? Do you have passion for the role that you're in today and around leadership and being a leader? Are you a transparent leader? Are you a leader that's real? Because you see, today, people are looking for leaders who are real, transparent, and authentic. The last piece I've got around this, how you show up as a leader and why it matters, is your attitude. I've talked about things being in your control and out of your control in these different episodes. Many people try to control things that are out of their control. But there are 2 things that are in your control today. One is your attitude, in other words, the way you react to things. And number 2 is our direction. In other words, where you are going next. And so if you can get very clear on those different things, that's actually going to help you a lot in relation to being a relevant leader. Here you go. You ready for number 4? Number 4 is building networks. Now, building networks, building relationships, a lot of people get hung up on that word network. Not many leaders are very good at networking. It is a skill, it is an art, and for you to actually do this. Now, the reason being is that many people are afraid that others may not want to talk to them, or don't know if we've got a topic to talk about and some common interests. Some people want to meet other people to get something from that person, and if that's your attitude, and if that is your approach, then it's probably not going to work for you very well. I always find that it's important to sow seeds, build relationships, nurture them. Because you see, depending on what you put into the relationship is depending on what you're going to get out of the relationship. Very important for you to build networks, both inside the organization and outside the organization. When I say inside the organization, what do I mean? Well, the thing here is that as you build a network inside the organization, you might be focusing today on your team or in your business unit. But what about cross-business units? Are you working in a silo, or are you collaborating with others and working with others to understand more about what you can do and grow off each other? Now, the thing here is this. One thing I know about networking is that you have to consistently work at it. Be active in networking. Go and meet people all the time. Now, for you, you might want to meet people online through LinkedIn as an example. What a wonderful platform to use for you to actually meet people, understand people, well, research people and find them, and then actually go and meet them online with the view to bring them offline for you to meet. Now, if you're in the same city as them and you can meet face-to-face, great. Then that's offline. If you're traveling to another city and you can meet people there and you're wanting to meet up with 2 to 3 to 4, 5 people, and you can reach out to them on LinkedIn and then try, look to get a coffee with them as well, that would be wonderful. But you know what, with today and the way that we're living around the pandemic and working from home, I'm actually calling where you're actually having a one-on-one Zoom meeting with somebody, a Teams meeting, or whatever device you're using. I'm calling that also offline at this stage. Because the thing is, you're taking them out of a large platform or scenario or network or forum, and you bring them one-on-one for you two to have an awesome discussion and talk about them and understand them and learn more about them going forward. So building networks is a huge thing. Don't get hung up on the word network. Think about relationships and think about what you're going to sow seeds and nurture it and grow it and get to know other people, which would be pretty cool. Number 5, keep developing yourself. I cannot emphasize this one any much more because I think this one is really, really important. The developing yourself. Don't wait on your organization to develop you. I've never done that. I've always made sure that I've developed myself. I've never waited for others to develop me. Now, if the organization does, that's just cream on top. Go and take control and develop yourself. Now, how can you do that? Well, there's various ways that you can stay ahead of the industry curve and understand what's going on because, you see, knowledge is really important. You can read books. You can read executive book summaries. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, some of you are going to say, oh, Dennis, I don't actually have time to read books. Well, that's an excuse. Reading books is actually going to help you. Now, for some of you, you're tired of reading books. You're tired of reading full stop. You're reading emails all day, text messages, presentations, white papers, articles. You're reading all the time. What I'm talking about here is an executive book summary whereby they take the 300 pages of a book, they summarize it, and they give you the nuggets. They summarize it into 8 pages. Probably a 15, 20-minute read. Now, you just imagine that, and there's some wonderful apps out there that do that, and if you don't know, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to share with you. Audiobooks is really good. So as I'm getting ready in the morning, I'm listening to a book. As I drive somewhere, I'm listening to a book. If I go out for one hour walk, I'm listening to a book, or I'm listening to a podcast. But I'm always growing myself and learning from others. What about YouTube? You can watch YouTube, and you can watch some things around that and grow yourself on different topics. And then you can also listen to podcasts as an example. All I know is this. If you keep growing yourself and focus on what you need to learn, then you're going to be in a better space. You're going to be able to stay up with industries. You're going to be able to stay up with technology. You're going to be able to stay up with the local trends and what's happening. So here's an example. For some of you, you might be thinking about your next steps or next 2 roles or next role or 2 roles, right? Or you might be thinking about a business idea and so forth. Well, where are you today in the skills and capabilities in the role that you do today? What is the role that you look like you're going to want to go ahead and do in the future? And what skills and capabilities do you need for that role? And then understand between where you are today and where you want to be in the future, there's going to be some gaps. So then how do you close those gaps? What training, what development, what opportunities do you need to be able to build your skills, your capability, and your experience to start setting you up for success for the new role? So make sure you keep growing yourself and developing yourself throughout time. There is one more thing. I did say there was 5 different areas, but I think there's one more thing that brings it all together nicely. And listen, so that's actually having a coach. If you've thought about having a coach, but you haven't always done it, or you're thinking about getting a coach, to take you to a new level, to help you understand where you are, to help develop your confidence while eliminating chaos. Just imagine that. If you're overwhelmed at the moment, you're doing some long hours, you're feeling like you're self-doubting yourself, or there's a little bit of confidence, you're overwhelmed, or you're a bit grumpy. Imagine if you can have a coach that's going to actually help you start to think through that, help you become more high-performing, to help you go to new levels, to be able to cope with things, to understand where you're at, and work with tools, your mindset, and a whole range of other things as well. A coach is somebody who's independent, who isn't related to your compensation and benefits, because that's with your boss, right? So your coach isn't your boss. Somebody whereby you can be vulnerable, transparent, and real, and work through some things that are going to help you go to that next level. So if you're looking for a coach, I'm looking on taking 3 other people right now to help them move forward in whatever they wanted to do in their business, in their careers, whatever it is. If you're wanting to go to another level, please feel free to reach out to me. Send me a DM on Facebook, or if you're on LinkedIn, send me a DM as well through social media. We're also going to have my email at the bottom of this in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to me because I'm more than happy to have a chat to you about how we can help you go to the next level, how we can help you become or being a relevant leader. Being a relevant leader is going to help you stand above the crowd. Why? Because you're a leader that knows where they're going. You're a leader that is investing in yourself, and you're a leader that is willing to have courage and be bold and step out there to move things forward. Hey listeners, what we as leaders know to be true is that change is constant. Change is incredibly scary, especially with the unknown and unfamiliar territory. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing. Look out for the episodes as they're being released, download them, have a listen, put a review and a rating. Feel free to share them with your friends, your family, and your network. Hey, if there's any feedback you'd like to give me about the show, or if there's a question you have for the Ask Denis freestyle episode, then send me an email, dennis@leadingchangepartners.com. Hey, listeners, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.